morning everyone. Today is our Great Barrier Reef tour. We are picked up at a hotel by a bus. There's a little delay as there was a mix-up with the pickup time for a few people, so had to make an extra stop. But not a huge delay, so no biggie. The bus trip was probably about 40 to 50 minutes, and we all had to fill out a snorkel info form. Everyone had to fill one out regardless of whether you were snorkeling or not. After we arrived at the wharf, we had to get fitted for snorkel gear. Then you carry this all with you to the boat and onto the island. We boarded a boat which will take us to the island. It's about 30 to 40 minutes ride. We spend almost the day here. There is a few activities to do. Semi-sub tour, guided snorkeling safari, beach snorkeling, swimming, kayaking and paddleboarding. We also get a buffet lunch included in the tour package. Beach snorkeling, swimming, kayaking and paddleboarding can be done anytime throughout the duration on the island. Guides will be on the beach and in the water supervising and assisting if needed. There is a toilet on the boat and on the beach if needed. After we arrive on the island, we are given an intro of do's and don'ts, and signals that are used that we need to be aware of. Then the activities start. We have signed up for a few activities. The first activity is the semi-sub.
In the early 20th century, the island group became a popular fishing and boating destination due to its proximity to the coastline. And in 1929, a lighthouse was built on Russell Island. 7 years later, in 1936, the islands were declared a national park while the surrounding waters were included in the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park in 1983. The reef we are visiting today is Normanby Maple Reef, as it is adjacent to Normanby and Maple Islands and is part of the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park. The reef here is a green zone, which means it is a no-take area. Anyone can participate in activities such as boating, swimming, snorkeling and sailing, but cannot engage in extractive activities such as collecting or fishing. Green zones help protect the biodiversity by protecting important breeding and nursery areas, such as the seagrass beds and reef communities found around Normanby Island. The green zone allows fish sizes to increase and numbers of offspring to increase as well. These fish can then move into adjacent areas, creating a spillover effect, which helps replenish fish stocks in areas where fishing is allowed, such as around Russell Island. Normanby Maple Reef is just one of roughly 2,900 reefs which make up the Great Barrier Reef, the world's largest coral reef system, stretching over 2,300 kilometres and covering roughly 345 square kilometres. This means if the Great Barrier Reef was its own country, it would be the 65th largest country in the world, sitting between Germany and Malaysia. As we go along the reef today, you will see a significantly healthy reef, which plays host to an extraordinary diversity of life. However, theoretically, the reef here should be extremely poor or perhaps shouldn't even exist at all. The reason for this is the proximity of the reef to the mainland and a series of rivers that flood tons and tons of fresh water every wet season. Corals cannot survive in fresh water at all. However, there is a strong current that runs around the island group which acts as a buffer against the influx of fresh water. Another reason the reef we are visiting today is so healthy and has minimal bleaching can be attributed to the extreme tides we get on the island. Normanby Island can experience up to 3-metre tides, which is very large for such a small island with such vast fringing reefs. These tides can significantly change the depth of the reef, producing rock pools or even exposing some corals. In summer, these shallow waters can get significantly warmer, exposing corals to the extreme temperature ranges we see on the island. These corals on the island have been exposed to these conditions over generations, which means around the island we have been seeing much less bleaching compared to a vast majority of the Great Barrier Reef. Now we know the history of Franklin Island, let's take a look at the reef itself. It's called a coral reef for the obvious reason that the reef structure is produced by important reef-building corals, which form a hard skeleton. Each coral you see here today is a colony of countless genetically identical polyps. Each polyp is typically a couple of millimetres in diameter and is closely related to sea anemones and jellyfish. The polyps are a sac-like animal with a set of tentacles which surround the central mouth opening. The polyps sit in a small cup, and then as they grow they lift themselves upwards from the base and secrete calcium carbonate to form filling which fills the base of the cup and creates a new layer above it. Reefs begin when the coral polyp attaches itself to a rock on the sea floor. It then divides and buds into thousands of clones. Reef-building corals exhibit a wide variety of shapes, and over many generations, the colony creates a large skeleton, characteristic of its species. Corals scavenge for food by catching drifting and dissolved organic molecules with their tentacles. Some corals contain small stinging cells in the polyp's tentacles which paralyze or kill prey, allowing them to feed on a variety of organisms from microscopic zooplankton to small fish. Although some corals have the ability to catch their own food, most obtain a majority of their energy and nutrients from a small single-celled algae living within the polyp's tissues. This algae is known as zooxanthellae. Corals acquire the algae from the surrounding environment, and up to 30% of the polyp's tissues may be algal material. This algae forms an important relationship with corals known as a symbiotic relationship. This relationship between corals and zooxanthellae has developed over many generations to the point where both the coral and the zooxanthellae algae are dependent on each other. Corals provide the zooxanthellae algae with a nice, safe and stable environment within the tissue of the coral polyps. And in exchange, the zooxanthellae provides the corals with energy and nutrients. This is because zooxanthellae is a plant and has the ability to produce its own sugars through photosynthesis. This means the reef you are looking at today is due to an important relationship between plants and animals. Because photosynthesis requires sunlight, corals reliant on this important relationship must be close to the surface. These reef-building corals are known as hard corals, but there are also soft corals. The main difference between hard and soft corals is their structural makeup. Instead of having a hard calcium-based skeleton, soft corals contain tiny, spiny skeletal elements for support, which also gives their flesh a spiky, grainy texture, deterring any predators. Soft corals are also less dependent on this photosynthetic algae and catch plankton themselves, allowing them to survive in much deeper waters. Throughout the Great Barrier Reef, there are over 400 species of hard corals and over 1/3 of the world's species of soft corals. The reef we are looking at today is a fringing reef and around an island, sitting in shallow water. This means the main corals you'll see here today are reef-building hard corals, although there are still some soft corals around. The main types of hard corals you will see out on the reef today are branching corals, boulder corals and table corals, which have various rates of growth. Some branching corals, such as staghorn corals, can grow up to 30 centimetres a year, which is about the same rate as human hair. While the big boulder corals you will see today grow extremely slowly and are very long-lived. These boulder corals grow as little as 3 millimetres a year, making them roughly 600 to 800 years old around Normanby Island. Corals can reproduce in almost every fashion possible. Some corals are unisexual, whilst others are hermaphrodites, meaning they produce both sperm and egg cells. Over several nights each year, the corals pump their sperm and egg into the water in hope that compatible sperm and egg float towards each other. By synchronising the event, there is greater chance of reproduction, as corals cannot move to find their mates. The Great Barrier Reef explodes as corals spawn in a unique synchronised event. On inshore reefs such as Normanby Island, spawning usually starts 1 to 6 nights after the first full moon in October, whereas on the outer reef, spawning will occur during November or December. When an egg is fertilised by a sperm, it develops into a coral larva, called a planula, which floats around in the water for several days or weeks before settling on the ocean's floor. After the planula has settled in a particular area, it starts to bud and the coral colony develops. The Great Barrier Reef is over 20,000 years old and is the largest coral reef system in the world. This means the reef supports an extraordinary diversity of life, including a huge number of species found nowhere else in the world. The coral reef provides food, habitat, shelter and nurseries for a wide variety of marine life. Due to the marine life the coral reef supports, it has become one of the most abundant and diverse ecosystems on the planet. The Great Barrier Reef is home to more than 1,500 species of fish, 17 species of sea snake, 30 species of marine mammals including dugongs and humpback whales, 15 species of seagrasses, 6 of the world's 7 sea turtle species, 125 species of sharks, stingrays and skates, 5,000 species of mollusks, and 9 species of seahorses. While the islands throughout the reef also support over 2,000 species of plants, 215 species of birds, and 7 endemic species of frogs. Around the island we have a few seagrass beds, which are host to turtles and dugongs. Green sea turtle is the most common turtle found around Normanby Island, with the odd hawksbill turtle also being seen. The green sea turtles typically nest on the southwestern beach of Normanby Island. When females reach roughly 45 years of age, they'll start to breed, laying on average 115 eggs per nest. Breeding season typically spans from November to January, and hatchlings will emerge between December and April, depending on when the eggs were laid. Green sea turtles on the Great Barrier Reef have a hatchling success rate of roughly 85%, while only about 1% will make it to sexual maturity. No wonder so many eggs are required to maintain a stable population. Today you are also likely to see some giant clams. Scattered throughout Normanby Reef, there is a very strong and stable population of giant clams, which are the largest bivalve mollusk in the world. This very impressive clam can live up to 150 years in the wild and takes roughly 50 years to reach its maximum size, which can be up to 200 kilograms and measure well over a metre wide. Much like corals, the giant clam obtains its nutrients from zooxanthellae algae. So throughout the day, the clam opens its shell and extends its mantle tissue so the algae receives the sunlight it needs for photosynthesis. The giant clam is also a hermaphrodite and reproduces via broadcast spawning. Releasing sperm and eggs into the water, the fertilized egg floats for roughly 12 hours until a larva hatches and starts to produce a shell and develops a foot, which is used to move and swim in search of an appropriate habitat. For the first few weeks, the clam will change location frequently until eventually finding a suitable location where it will remain the next 100 years. Also keep an eye out for a sea anemone, home to the famous and well-known clownfish, also known as Nemo. Sea anemones are closely related to corals and jellyfish, but they are not a coral. They use an adhesive foot called a pedal disc, which it uses to attach to rocks or the sea floor. They can even move if they feel threatened by predators or if the water conditions become unfavourable. The anemone's mouth is in the centre of all the tentacles and leads to their digestive tract, which makes up most of their body. They have stinging cells at the end of their tentacles, which are used to paralyse and capture fish and shrimp. The stinging cells have sensitive hairs that, when brushed, trigger the cell to explode, sending barbs and injecting toxins into its prey. Clownfish coat themselves in a mucus covering that protects them from the sting of the sea anemone. Clownfish can only live in roughly 10 of the more than 1,000 species of sea anemones. Looking out at Normanby Reef today, you'll notice very minimal bleaching. This is due to many reasons. The main reason is because the conditions at Normanby Reef are very tough for the corals, which the corals around Normanby Island have adapted to. With almost 3-metre tides on the island, the shallow areas of the reef are intertidal, which means part of the reef itself is sometimes out of the water for up to 6 to 8 hours each day. During this time, the corals are exposed to much warmer waters and increased salinity. The rivers scattered along the coast also flood in loads of sediment, lowering the water quality. However, a majority of the rest of the Great Barrier Reef, conditions are much more constant and corals haven't adapted to harsher conditions. So with rapid changes due to human-induced climate change, a lot of the reef is facing sudden and abrupt changes. Coral bleaching occurs when the corals are stressed by changes in conditions such as temperature, light, or nutrients.
After the semi-sub, there is a guided snorkel safari for wood swimmers, which we opted out of and did beach snorkeling instead. The last activity was the guided island tour, where our guide goes through what to be aware of and what we will see. Some history and interesting info of marine life, corals and plants. You can choose to skip this tour and continue to snorkel or relax on the beach. We all need to get back to the main meeting point by 2:30 p.m, where we will board the boat to go back to the wharf. The bus will be waiting to pick us up and take us back to the hotel. That's it for day 3 of our Cairns trip. Until the next day, bye for now.